Today, we're going to cover the 2024-25 Golden State Warriors and preview this team going into the season. So, last season, of course, the 2023-24 record in advanced stats. Last season, we finished 46 and 36, fifth in the Pacific Division, 10th in the West. Offensive rating was top 10. It finished ninth at 116.9. Defensive rating 15th at 114.5 with a net rating of 2.4, which finished 13th overall. We were 21 and 20 at home with a defensive rating of 115.8, which finished 23rd in the NBA of all teams at home. So we were 23rd in home defense. Our record at home was atrocious. It was abysmal. We didn't protect home court the way a championship team should. And that's really one area of improvement I hope we can address this year, because in order for us to be a great team, we have to be a great home team. Um, 25 and 16 on the road, of course, no complaints there. Defensive rating on the road was top 10. It was actually sixth last season at 113.1. So we had a sixth ranked defense on the road. We were an incredible road team. In fact, we finished with a better road record than some top three seeds in the league. So, absolutely great job there. Let's hope we can carry that into the season. And then, obviously, last season, our season finished in the 9-10 play-in game. We lost to the Kings. But one of the biggest takeaways last year for me is that we had 27 different starting lineups. We failed to really establish and generate continuity and some consistency throughout because we kept switching up these lineups. Obviously, there was a myriad of reasons why. Starters weren't playing well. They didn't really build that chemistry and continuity that we wanted. And because of that, we didn't really find our groove until later on in the season. So let's hope that this season we can establish a consistent and really effective starting lineup that dominates teams. And then from there, we can build up and then continue to, run the rotation accordingly. But we had a lack of a defensive identity last year. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, 23rd in defense at home and 15th overall. Lack of a defensive identity. Obviously, you're not winning a championship without playing defense. And then we didn't have a second scoring option. Obviously, that's another area that we're kind of missing. But at the same time, there's ways to work around it with balance. And this season, we have a lot of balance. We have Buddy Hield. Jonathan Kuminga is going to take a step. Moses Moody just got extended. DeAnthony Melton. So we have a logjam of guys that are capable of providing that balance. So even though we didn't have a true second option last season that could really propel us over the top when Steph faced rigorous coverages, I still think we're in really good shape this year in terms of the roster construction. But any thoughts on just last season overall, guys? Like, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, like I do agree. Last year, I this roster did do a better job in preserving Steph. I do believe that because last year, not only did Steph have to do everything offensively, he also had to defend, right? Last year, you cannot name me a better defender on the roster outside of Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green that were clear positives, right? Gary Payton was in and out. When he did play, he was solid, but he was in and out. Kevon Looney regressed really badly. Klay Thompson was bad. CP was bad. Pod was a neutral, but you can't consider him a good defender, right? TJD was solid, right? But we had no real POA, right? So Steph Curry last year was forced to guard while also being like the first option and carrying the offense. This year we definitely did do a good job in helping Steph. We got a better defense, so he can
Mm-hmm.
only focus on offense, but we have more of a balance like scoring, right? Obviously Jonathan Kaminga is gonna play from the jump. Moses Moody's gonna play for the jump. So you're gonna have two fresh young legs and you're just gonna have more scorers. Like Melton can score, but Hield's a shooter. Trace can give you some points. Kevon Looney, he worked on his offensive game over the summer, so I do agree this year. Not only is the offense better, Steph won't have to do everything, but the defense is also better, right? So Steph can focus only on offense because I feel like last year he also had to focus on defense, and like a lot of times his legs were worn out by the fourth quarter. So we just did an overall good job in like helping out Steph.
I agree. And I think the roster is just better top to bottom. Um, Jim, what do you think? Like last season, any issues that you saw? I mean, these are just the numbers and the raw stats, but like just empirically or visually, qualitatively, like what were some things that you didn't like? Because I know one of the biggest issues, like I mentioned, was like the starting lineups. We really it kind of cost us because we never really had a fully consistent rotation. Did you want to add anything? Because I think there's some other things too. Anyone's that's crazy. I know, ball. Nothing else. Okay.
Did I miss anything?
Oh no, I was just asking. Do you want to add anything to the stats breakdown?
Oh, I just got back, so I don't know. Oh, you're predicting that they're gonna be. Wait.
This was last year's. We just recapped last year.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Anything on about last year that you want to add though, like in terms of like what happened, what went wrong, and that kind of thing?
No, leave that shit in the dust. We know what happened.
Okay, got you. Let's do that. All right, so Jim, this is your forte. I'll obviously break Steve down here, some of his strengths and weaknesses, but I want you to add whatever, interject whenever you feel you need to, and let's really break Steve Kerr down here. So one of Steve's strengths that I was able to identify was his ability to define player roles. More times than not, he's able to set expectations. Last season, that was a struggle because we had such a deep roster. But the way he does this is establishing trust by, empowering players, even the lower end, bench players that may not be in the rotation on some other teams, or two-way players even. He always finds a way to get them in the game and find ways for them to contribute, which can be viewed as a positive because it connects the team more and it gets them involved. And then he also develops assistants. When Steve is paired with great assistant coaches, he does a really good job of handing them the mantle at times and allowing them to, express themselves and and really add a positive flair to this team. Whether it's um, Luke Walton, Alvin Gentry, Mike Brown, and this season's going to be or Kenny Atkinson actually the last couple of years, but this season it'll be Jerry Stackhouse and Terry Stotts. One of the great things about Steve is that he does empower his players and assistant coaches alike. And then group dynamics, right? Oh, go ahead. You say something? Oh, okay. Group dynamics. He's a people manager, right? Communication, emotional intelligence. So he's someone that's going to really talk to players, understand them, understand how they think, how they react to things, understands what makes them tick, and communicate, right? Like having that line of communication so that they're not left in the dark and that they're aware of their role and where they stand on a game-to-game basis. It's really important to keep them, aware and understanding how the team is going to navigate, on that night and in the future. So Steve does a good job of that. And then he has really good emotional intelligence. He has a really good ability to read people and understand, like, for example, Klay Thompson last season, some of the struggles he went through, dealing with the injuries, coming back and having to navigate through that, having to start, then come off the bench, and some of the struggles he had to deal with mentally. I think Steve has shown a really good capacity to relate and to empathize with players that are dealing with struggles like that. So his emotional intelligence is really high, and he does a very good job of, like I said, just empathy and getting to know players at a deep level so that it can translate also on the court. And then obviously he implemented the motion offense, the read and react play style, sharing the basketball, creating the biggest advantage possible. Back in 2015, the Princeton concepts, the text winner principles, as Shadow always breaks down, the freedom of movement, screening, cutting, all of this free flowing style has allowed us to play in a way that's dynamic and unpredictable. So I think through the years, the motion offense has been kind of revolutionary. Now, there's been a lot of teams that have taken some of these concepts and implemented it in their own rights, right? So you look at a team like the Kings or a team like the Nuggets or even the Lakers this year. There have been teams that have pulled different things from the motion offense that Steve has kind of resurrected and evolved over time and tried to, apply it to their own program and, take advantage of that. So obviously he's done something right from that standpoint. And then his relationship between coach and superstar, obviously he built the system around Steph and they've found a winning formula. The winning formula is defense and balance. Having balance as from a scoring standpoint, and then defensive pieces that can surround Steph Curry and insulate him so that essentially there's nowhere to hide, there's nowhere to run. Teams are going to switch off of different high-level defenders on offense, and then defensively they're going to have to guard a dynamic ball movement, player movement system that generates balance across the roster, which is huge. Because when you have these heliocentric teams that are playing through one player or two players, it can kind of have limitations and you can kind of hit a wall. Whereas with the motion offense, it promotes balance across the roster. Are there any other strengths you guys want to add to Steve?
I think you did a lot already.
Okay. Weaknesses. Offensive
That's true.
system. Offensive system
It's crazy.
limitations.
It's crazy when you said Steve and my man Jim didn't say anything about him. He didn't even
Well,
jump and start yelling and cursing. It's
well,
crazy.
no,
But
I think those were fair points. I don't think Jim would object to any of those. I think for the most part. Now, obviously, there's a flip side, right? So, for example, here, um, there's some offensive system limitations, right? So there have been points throughout the last few seasons as we've, gone through and evolved in this dynastic run that this system has become rigid and predictable, right? Once intentionally unpredictable, once intentionally a dynamic system that caught teams off guard, that they didn't know how to defend, and teams were sort of uh, incapable of game planning. Now is a system that's a little bit obsolete, a little bit, outdated. The playbook is something we've had to update. And exploiting mismatches, mixing in ball screens, these are things that we have failed to do and more of the modern game that's really effective. And I think Steve needs to look forward to that this season is, finding more modern approaches, more updated ways to effectively generate offense. And, mismatches is one, and ball screens is another to create havoc on the defensive side. So teams are scrambling, they're rotating, and you put them in a very compromising position. And then sometimes the system doesn't always fit personnel, right? We bring in a bunch of players every season, anywhere from 2 to 4 players given the draft and free agency, and sometimes like Jermichael Green, for example, or a draft pick like James Wiseman, right? There's players that the system may not fit as to the nth degree, and we want it to fit, but sometimes players won't play to their full potential under Steve Kerr for that reason. And Kelly Oubre is another example, right? We traded for him, and obviously he did not exceed expectations. He actually underperformed, and obviously now you see him on another team excelling because in those systems, they're actually catering to his strengths and what he does well. So sometimes the system has its limitations, and that rigidity is something that Steve needs to adjust through, and this season is very important to do so. He's failed to develop the young players. He didn't play Moody or Kaminga enough last season. He's used the phrase "it's a numbers game," and then obviously the reporter Jonathan Kaminga last year saying that he lost faith in his ability to reach his full potential under Steve. Um, Obviously, Steve was not brought in to develop young players. He was brought in 2015 to take a really good up and coming Warriors team to a championship caliber roster and system and team overall, and he did that. I mean, his offensive system was able to bring the best out of Steph on and off the ball, and he was able to fit in a lot of players around that because the system ultimately is for the teammates, is for 2 through 5 more than Steph Curry at the one. But at the same time, um, while there are positives to the system, like I said, young players, it takes them time to develop and really pick up on the terminology, pick up on the nuances, pick up on the details of the system and the ways to execute, the passing, the cutting, the screening. These are things that take time to really key in on and to perfect. And, Kevon Looney is a perfect example of someone that's been drafted here who started off maybe, out of the rotation and then worked his way in by really season by season working on the details of how to fit into Steve Kerr's offense. So obviously, last season JK kind of had a breakout year, and that was more so by him forcing Steve Kerr's hand. Moody in preseason obviously got extended, and that was because he forced Steve's hands to some degree as well, and the team overall because of his play. He was aggressive, and at some points he even broke the system. But sometimes you need young players to make mistakes and learn from them. And I feel like with Steve, that's been definitely something that he's struggled with over the years is allowing them to kind of grow and um, kind of accelerate their development in that way. And then he's a stubborn decision maker, right? He doesn't really adjust his coaching approach enough. I feel like this is the one season, based on what he said in the offseason, where he's actually looking and searching for ways to adjust individually and look in the mirror and say, how can I be better as a coach? How can I improve? And so That's something that I expect this season for him to improve on. And I think a lot of us, and I've heard a lot of good things at the Chicago conference where he broke down how he's going to zag a little bit this year, change some of his philosophies and styles, simplified play calls, different terminology to keep guys, in rhythm and structured. Pick and roll frequency and ball screens are expected to go up. And another, because in the past, the frequency of pick and roll has gone down, right? Last season, we were amongst the fewest teams in running pick and roll, and we run more complex plays. So these are weaknesses of Steve that, make it difficult to pick up on the offense quickly and hit the ground running. This season, those are things I'm looking for. And then last year, he played a lot of 3-guard lineups, small ball lineups, right? Now, small ball should be a good thing in principle, but when you play small ball lineups that lean too much into guard play, especially guards who cannot defend and defend multiple positions at a high level, that is when you run into trouble. And I feel like the last couple of years, Steve has leaned into the 3-guard lineups, and that has really hurt us. So that's something that I want to see definitely this season be adjusted. And then playing veterans in front of the youth. Obviously, you want to lean veterans. You want to lean the players that have won and been there before. You want to lean, the best of the best in the know-how. Of course, execution is key. But at the same time, when the youth are outplaying certain vets, you also have to empower them because they are on the roster too, and you have to make the most of everyone. And if they're playing well, you need to ride the hot hand. There were plenty of times last season where Moses Moody hit multiple shots in a row against the Kings in the in-season tournament game, hit multiple threes, and then Steve Kerr took him out because of the scripted rotations. In certain situations, you have to just allow rotations to be fluid, allow players to stay in the game when they're hot and when they're in rhythm. And then obviously with JK, right, when he was dominating against Denver, Steve Kerr pulled him out as well, never put him back in the game. So those are things throughout the years, like I've noticed where when certain players, especially young players, have in rhythm, and even Steph Curry, when Steph Curry's hot and he's not missing shots and he feels like he can break the game open and be in rhythm, well, Steve has also pulled him out as well. So there's times where Steve leans too much into the scripted rotations, and that's something he needs to be more flexible with because flexibility is important. That's how you win games. You have to adjust on the fly and play it by ear. But Jim, anything else or anyone else on stage or in the chat? What do you guys think?
Well, I got to say, you're cooking, bro. You're cooking with Crisco.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree 1,000,000%. Especially like we're at a standpoint where this roster, and one of the reasons why, so you brought up we don't have a true second option, right? And this is something people bring up when they think why this team can go all the way. Well, one of the reasons why they didn't do that is because they believe in the young kids, right? They believe in the young core they have here. They think they can all take a step and they can help Steph right now. And that's something Steve's got to lock into this year. Because the last 3 years, none of our young players have gotten consistent minutes. Not one of them have gotten real consistent minutes, right? So this year, Steve's got to lock in and he's got to play all of them. And that includes Moses Moody. I don't want to hear that's a numbers game anymore. You know what I mean? Because Moses Moody does provide you something you don't have, and that's scoring, because you don't really have scoring. While Buddy Hield can do that, Buddy Hield's a shooter. Moses Moody is a scorer, and he can
Baba.
score in different levels, right? So you have to buy in this year, and you have to play Moses Moody. I don't want to
Baba.
see. Yeah, what's up?
The numbers game has changed from whatever it was to now
Uh
14 to
huh.
15 million dollars a year, man. That's
That,
the
right, right,
numbers
right.
numbers game
That
have
is true.
changed,
He
bro.
did get paid. He did get paid. But I still want to emphasize that because I still don't trust Steve Kerr. Because Steve Kerr has always shown a tendency to, lean with his veterans, lean with the people he likes and he trusts. So I don't want to see Gary Payton playing over Moses Moody. At times it is fine, but I don't want it that, what's it called? GP2 is playing over Buddy. GP2 is playing over Moses Moody a lot. We don't want that, right? So that is
Mm-hmm.
one thing I agree with Dre. Like, we gotta lock in this year, and you gotta play the young players because they can help you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Jim, do you have anything to add in terms of weaknesses that you think I missed on, or anything that you want to expand on?
I think he lacks the ability to think for himself. I think things need to be told to him for him to realize anything. I think the perfect example of that is over the summer, over the off season, where apparently it was Mike Dunleavy who, quote unquote, triggered the idea that he may want to rebolster his, you know, coaching staff situation, and that's just like that's something that Steve said, which is like Mike Dunleavy came over to him, in the offseason to discuss with him about how it may be a good idea for Steve to get some help. Maybe it's Mike's nice way of saying you can't be left to your own devices because it's just not good enough. Like there's a lack of common sense in the things that you do. You know what I mean? You think about last season. I don't want to go back to it all that much, right? Like I said before, but a lot of it was just common sense based issues. Like if you have common sense, you would know that your defense would fail if you keep putting Dario Saric 20 minutes per game at the center spot. Is that you guys think that that's common sense or no?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and obviously there might have been other circumstances that led to those decisions, but yeah, no, I agree. If it's not working, you have to adjust.
Right, and he has a tendency to keep doing the same thing over and over, whether it works or not. That's been his thing. Even Steph kept talking about it in the post games. The last couple of seasons, he's like, well, what would be insane is for us to do the exact same thing and expect different results. But that's what they kept getting from the coaching staff. So when Steve doesn't have enough help, then this team is never going anywhere. When he has more intelligent minds and elite minds, basketball minds that can help him navigate through the season with different ideas, where he can pick up those ideas from these people and agree upon it and then execute it, then the Warriors can find success. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that was the blueprint for their first championship as well. Changing that starting lineup in the finals, right? Putting Iguodala in the starting lineup, benching Andrew Bogut. Once again, that was not Steve Kerr's idea. And if it wasn't for Uren, maybe they wouldn't have done that. And maybe they would have run into more trouble because they didn't have that idea. You know what I mean? So he is somebody who needs a lot of wisdom by his side because he doesn't have enough of that on his own. He cannot be left to his own devices because at the end of the day, him by himself to me is a charlatan. He's not real. Like he's not a real coach that can like organize things himself. He needs a lot of help. Okay. And he has that now. So that's the good news.
Yep. No, well said. I do think he's, like I said, his strengths lie mostly in, he does have X's and O's capabilities for sure, but I think he does a great job more so of getting guys on the same page, making sure that they understand their roles and what they can excel at on this team, how they can contribute, and kind of what he expects of them every night, and ways they can kind of, improve and be of better, from a contribution standpoint, be more effective on this team.
I don't think he's done that all that well either. You look at how out of control his main players have been over the years. Klay Thompson, he had no control over Klay.
That's true.
What about Draymond? He had no control over Draymond. Draymond punches a teammate, and he still doesn't have the stones to give him a couple of games to suspend him. You know what I mean? So that's a lack of leadership, lack of accountability, lack of control. He's too nice, so players just walk right over him.
That is a fair point, but I will also say that there are some more challenging dynamics because with Draymond and Klay, there is like that long time relationship that he also has to. It's not like it's a new player that he can kind of set straight, or those guys have been around and they have a different relationship. But you're right that it did take Steve a little bit too long to bench Klay for sure, and we're not sure what happens behind the scenes when it comes to him and Draymond, but my hope is that he was he'd be a little bit more vocal about what is and isn't acceptable from Draymond. So that is true.
I will say though that Steve seems to be really aligned this season. I think again these better coaches by his side, Terry Stotts implementing his stuff into the Warriors system on both ends of the floor apparently, and understanding what this team is capable of and believing in this team, like all this kind of stuff. Like I think so far from the things that we've heard him say, for the most part, I feel like Steve's at a really good place.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And then so now expectations. Um, what are some of your expectations from Steve this year? Before I list off what I think.
I expect him to just sit there and enjoy.
So
Let the assistants take care of what they need to take care of. He
so
just needs to
so
make sure that the rotations are good, and that's it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
so you're not gonna criticize him at all this season.
Hopefully, there's not much to criticize. I'm expecting, a really great season. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you said we're gonna win 53 games. So yeah.
No, he said 60. Well, how much did you say, Jim?
Woo!
I
63
said 60 plus.
or 60 plus? 60 plus,
I
yeah.
said 53.
Damn.
He did
Okay.
say
Okay.
53. Well, okay, so these are my expectations based on everything that we know and heard this offseason. So Steve did mention, modernizing the offense a little bit more, changing his approach and philosophies, playing more pace and space. He did mention he wants to play faster and shoot more, high volume, or be a more high volume 3-point shooting team. So that's something that he's mentioned as a very important keystone to this new roster and the new play style that we're trying to develop and adopt.
He
Obviously,
finally acknowledged that his old, antiquated, outdated system is not good enough anymore.
hmm
It should have happened a few years back, but better late than never.
yeah, no doubt. And I mean, he did mention still that shout out Yo Yo Man. Time is running out. Pick a damn side. Yes, sir. Appreciate you, bro. We're gonna be picking some sides tonight, man. Sides shall be picked. Um, but Steve also mentioned though he does want to maintain the read and react style. Like he doesn't want to lose those principles. Still play the motion offense, not veer away too much from it, but add in some more modern concepts and approaches to keep a more balanced structure offensively because this still is the style, the player movement, the ball movement, cutting, screening, passing, all of that.
The motion can be very unpredictable if you run more nuanced schemes with obviously better combinations and personnel. Um, my 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 thing about the motion offense was never that it's terrible and they shouldn't use it. They just need to find better balance and they need to run more variations. Even when you run a pick and roll, right? You can run a basic pick and roll, high pick and roll, nothing else happening other than like those two guys and the guy standing in the corner or something. Or you can run a Spain, or you can run multiple actions that leads into the Spain. And these are the different unexpected multiple bodies setting screens, multiple bodies being moved, confusing the defense. There are cutters, there are shooters everywhere, and that makes you become more unpredictable. And if you're more unpredictable, it makes you a harder team to guard. So,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
those are the
Yep.
things that they finally implemented that we're seeing that we haven't seen over the years.
100%. 100%. And then like kind of he mentioned earlier too, like adding structure to help the younger players, right? He wants to add some more, structure within the flow of the offense so that the terminology is easier to use and to understand. That the sets that we're running, the actions that we're calling aren't so complex, and it'll help the younger guys just get into the flow and not get stuck. Because sometimes we got stuck last season and we didn't know what to do or how to react to the way the defense was guarding us. So there's certain options that we can take from each given set to really branch off and have different options and different ways to score out of it. So that's another thing that Steve has mentioned: integrating balanced lineups, two-way, right, leaning offense, leaning defense, as best as you can. Obviously, this roster isn't perfect, but it has a lot of quality pieces like Melton, Wiggins. Draymond's still a high level anchor. Trace can anchor the defense as well. Steph Curry, obviously, as the primary offensive engine. And then you have guys like Buddy Hield and Pods, and Kyle Anderson's a connector. So there's a lot of guys that can kind of fill in. But just integrating balanced lineups, making sure that we're two-way, not small ball necessarily. If it's small ball with Draymond at the 5, that can work. But if you're running 3 guards and those guards can't defend, then it makes it really, really difficult to maintain small ball lineups. So you want to make sure that even if you're running small ball, that you're leaning defense still, and that you're managing the combinations so that we don't lose one side or the other of the ball. I mean, it's difficult to achieve, but it must be done if we're intending to make a deep run.
But also, if you don't see a tangible advantage when you do run the small lineups, then stop running it. That's
Mhm.
part of the updating your ideologies and thinking process. If the reason the small lineups were so popular in the earlier days, when they used to be called the death lineup and all these things, the reason it was called the death lineup was because they were destroying teams running these lineups. Are you destroying teams by going smaller? And do you have the right combinations that allows that to happen? If so, then run it. But if you don't see the same results, right? Why are you doing that? If you see the team struggling and their defense is not holding up, then why are you still doing that? So that doesn't make any sense. And then there's also I don't think that Steve is much of a empowerment guy. He doesn't instill confidence in the players to do what they do best. I don't think that's that is a specialty of certain coaches that Steve doesn't possess, because if that were the case, there would be so many players that would thrive, and that just hasn't been the case. If you think about what happened last season, like everybody was struggling in the first 20 games. Everybody was shooting like sub 30% from the 3-point line. Nobody was confident. Nobody was hitting shit. That shows you like a lack of confidence in the players. Whereas there's a stark difference in what we've seen in the preseason now, is whereas everybody's confident. Everybody looks, even Looney is just zero hesitation
But
on that mid range. Um,
But Jim,
Go
to
ahead.
that point, don't you think that more so has to do with the roster construction shift? Like, it is more difficult to empower players that don't necessarily fit, or that like for example, Klay Thompson has limitations that were very difficult to work around, and Steve has to manage like keeping his spirits high, keeping his ego in check, while also like trying to win games, and it's a very difficult a very difficult tightrope, right? And it's difficult to manage guys like that when you've known them for so long and you've built that relationship. So I think Steve, I mean, I do agree. I don't think he's empowered the young players as much as he should have. But like for example, like the Loonies, the Wiggins, the
He
Draymonds.
empowered Pods.
Yeah, he did. He did empower Pods and Trace to some degree. Um, but yeah, J.K. and Moody, those guys have been in and out the rotation for a few years now. And I mean, Trace is starting, right? Trace has been starting dating back to last season. Pod started for a chunk of last year too. Now JK is starting, obviously, but Steve definitely has his flaws, no doubt. But I think when you give him the right pieces, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, like that empowerment becomes more apparent, and that empowerment becomes more emboldened, because now he's able to actually work with pieces that can work with what he's trying to do, and with what his, and again, that's a limitation, right? Because if he can't necessarily adjust to personnel, like just as much as he wanted Clay to adjust to what we wanted, in ways we tried to adjust to what Clay could do and what Clay couldn't do, right? By benching him, by trying to relegate his role, but those were things he was not willing to buy into. So there's only so much you can do to empower, like, and then Wiggins was obviously struggling for other reasons, because his ribs were had issues, his breathing was hard, and he wasn't fully healthy. Although I will say that I do agree he should have made some lineup adjustments earlier. And
I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by
mhm,
empowerment. Okay.
yeah,
So the type of offense that Steve Kerr wants to run is almost always like there's a prerequisite number of passes before anybody can get a shot up. And if a shot goes up too early, he'll be upset by that.
right.
I know this for a fact. I,
That's
I,
true.
I
That's
know
true.
people that have played for this team, been on this team, and they've told me this. So I know this. Um, this is part of the problem that Draymond had, in the earlier years. That's why they had that blow up in the OKC game, is because Steve was upset with Draymond that Draymond was taking. Sometimes he would take shots that was a little bit too early in the shot clock for his taste, and that disempowered Draymond and destroyed his confidence in his shot making ability. And he was never the same for like a decade after that. Would you agree with that? That he fundamentally changed as a
Yeah, the
shooter?
confidence was
That's the
killed
kind
for
of
sure.
that's what I mean by empowerment, is like, I believe in you. You do so much for us defensively. So every once in a while, especially if you're shooting 40 freaking percent from the 3-point line, I'm gonna give you the freedom and allow you to shoot those here and there without complaining about it. That would be an example of empowering a player to be the best version of himself. And you look
Just
at
to
this
piggyback
preseason,
on
like I
that.
said.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I say just to piggyback on that. If Looney ends up hitting like 44, 45% from like the mid range this year, right, or some number around that area, do you not think he could have been doing that like
The
3,
whole
4,
time?
5 years ago?
Exactly. I was saying that 2 seasons ago after they lost to the Kings. I was like, yo, they need to like tell Draymond and Loon to get up a lot of shots in the offseason. You guys are perfectly capable of shooting when you're wide open. You're just not doing it. I want you to do it. I trust you. I believe that you can make it, and I believe that could be a good part of our offense. When things break down or they leave you wide open, I believe you can punish teams. So don't just stand there hopelessly looking for somebody else to become open when you yourself are wide open. So that's the kind of empowerment stuff that I'm talking about. Moody, coming off a screen, coming off a curl, and just launching it right away. Same thing with these guys in transition. Notice they're trying to get up more threes, right? In order to get up more threes, you have to be confident about the fact that you're doing it, and it's coming from a lot of different players. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these shots that are in transition. They're launching threes, they're getting open looks, good looks, and nobody's hesitating. A lot of players feel like, I'm sharing the floor with Steph Curry, I shouldn't be the one shooting that. That is disempowerment. It's important that everybody,
I think there's a
that's what the
difference.
Celtics have been doing.
I think there's a difference between having guys who can make shots versus guys who are not known as shot makers. This season, the roster that we currently have, every single player except for Trace can actually shoot the ball. Can shoot the ball, maybe not a great shooter like Steph Curry, but they can shoot the ball and make it. Trace is the only player that has yet to exhibit a desire to even take a 15-foot jumper or a 10-foot jumper, to be honest with you, which does not make any sense to me. Last year,
What
we
makes
had
sense
several of
is
those
you
players
should
on
pick
the
a
roster.
side. Pick a side now.
What side do you want me to pick, man?
I don't know. Whatever.
I already picked my side. I said
Pick a side.
46 to 48 wins and 7
You want my
Ew.
left-handed or right-handed?
What's up?
Ew,
Side.
NTD.
Yes, sir. I don't trust. I
46
still
to
don't
40.
trust.
You telling me they're going to be the
That
same
Jim
team as
Parker.
last year?
No, well, they're gonna be somewhat a little better, but not that far, not that much better.
46. Are you dumb?
46, 48 wins.
Okay, so Anthony, what were we in the clutch last year?
In the clutch, we were top 5, I think.
That's what our clutch record, as in like, what would our
Clutch
I
record.
don't-
We were like slightly above 500, I think.
So the amount of blown leads we had last year, do you think that's going to be the same case this year, or because we blew a lot of leads? Like half our losses are off that bullshit. Like at least 5 or 6 of our games that we lost are off of just like 15 plus point leads blown. So do you think that's going to be the same this year, or?
Bro, they went 4-12 after they went like 6-2 in their
The only
first 8
thing
games.
not the same is me slapping shit out of you.
Bench him. I mean, not bench him.
We
Kick him. What did I say? Bench him.
we consistently ran 3 guards. We're running 3 guard lineups. We're not doing that this year. We're much better. I think we're a lot better positional sizing as well, because Wiggins will be at the 2 this year. So we'll definitely be a little bit better in terms of positional sizing, and we won't be running defensive compromising lineups constantly like we did last year. Not to mention, if you think JK, because NTD, you've been a huge JK guy. If you think it's going to take a step, then why would we get worse or maintain what we did last year? I don't really get that.
So you're saying that why would we get worse in the clutch?
Yeah, because I think so. Okay, I think a lot of the reason why we lost a lot last year was because of a mix of Draymond missing a lot of games and our clutch and the 3 guard lineups. Those were the 2 biggest Achilles heels we had last year, in my opinion. Was the 3 guard lineups and Draymond missing nearly a quarter of the season.
Well, first of all, they're just going to be in less clutch situations than last season.
Right.
The reason they were in a lot of these clutch, if you guys remember, they had moments last season where they went on these runs and they had like 15, 20-point leads. It just evaporated throughout the course of the game. And then it became a clutch situation because their defense was breaking up. It was allowing the other team to get their momentum back, and then they came back. That's why. And that is not going to happen this season, which is why We're not going to see a whole bunch of Steph Curry playing down to the final 2 minutes of the game, trying to, be clutch in those moments, like just about every game. That's not going to happen. They're going to have a lot more easier wins. So that alone will, add a bunch of wins.
Right. Well, I mean, I just want to see what is NT. Are you still here? Because I don't get 46 wins.
I'm still here, bro.
So give me your reasons on why you think that we didn't get better.
Let's put it this way. I think we are slightly better than what we were last season.
Okay.
However, let me clarify though. From what I see over the preseason, I think some of the concerns that I had going into the season, I might change my mind on that, because at first I didn't think we had enough shot makers. Right, the preseason is proving that our boys can make shots. As for instance, guys like Melton. I didn't know he was going to be such a good fit as an offensive player, nor as a defensive player. I knew that defensively he was going to be able to hold his own as far as a POA. But from what he's been able to do the last 5 games, at least in the preseason, I think I misjudged him a little bit. So therefore, I'm giving myself some room to change my mind after the first 15 games or so. All right. I'm right now, as we are right now, I'm calling for us to win no more than 46 to 48 games. But I can change my mind after that.
Yeah, that's
So
fine,
you're
man. That's
so you're
fine.
playing it. So you're playing it by ear.
Yeah. I'm not
Okay.
as crazy as some who are saying that we're gonna win the championship.
Okay.
I don't want to take that leap yet. Right.
Okay.
I want to give myself room to enjoy the season. You know what I mean? I don't
Okay.
It's because you're slow as fuck and you don't know talent when you see it.
I know an idiot when I hear one though.
Yeah.
Oh
Shit.
shit!
Oh
Oh my god!
shit!
That's NTD. You just
Oh, let's
ended it,
get it.
bro. Oh my god!
Let's get it.
That's crazy.
Benjo,
That's
get off
crazy.
stage, bro. You just got owned. You just got
Damn,
owned.
Benjo, you just
It's
got
That's
over
crazy.
for
Yeah,
ditched,
you.
man.
It's over.
Benjo, you can't show face anymore.
Benjo, you
You're
not my
done. You're
homeboy no
done.
You're
more.
You're
washed,
done.
man. You're washed.
Benjo, you not my
Caught him
homeboy.
washed.
All right. Anyways, so Jim, in the clutch, how do you think? Well, first of all, do you expect us to have as many clutch games as we did last season? Because
No, I just said no.
oh, you don't. Okay, and the reason is because you think we'll be more dominant defensively, so we can kind of navigate through that.
Yeah. What do we always talk about? Margin for error.
Mhm.
They had a lack of margin for error because they just defensively they just were never good enough last season, or for a chunk of it they weren't. And so this season that wouldn't be a problem. So there's going to be a lot of margin for error.
So the margin for error is something that you believe we can take advantage of, which I agree. I mentioned earlier, establishing a defensive identity, and that's something that Steve has really harped on this offseason, like this idea of leaning defense and getting back to a defensive, mindset that we can, carry with us, because we've kind of lost that over the years, and we are at our best when we are a top defensive team.
Only the last 2 seasons after they lost Mike Brown. Before that they were okay, and after that they were not okay. And well, that's what I've been screaming about. Is that Steve puts out? He says he cares about defense, but then he puts out lineups that
Mhm.
would suggest to you that actually he doesn't. So I don't know if
Which
you can understand that those lineups, if you put out those lineups, that you would not be a good defensive team. Like I don't know if he didn't realize that, or you know what I'm saying. Like I don't understand the logic, but this season there's not going to be those problems. They have great lineups, great connecting lineups, multiple legit size players. You're gonna play Slow Mo and Looney at the same time, if not Slow Mo and Trace at the same time. They have a ton of size. Even if they play a 3 guard lineup, it is very well protected. So you can afford to do that. Whereas before you're running 3 guard lineups, and sometimes you're running 4 guard lineups, and then you got like
Dario at the
non-power
5.
forwards at the 4 spot, and it's just like you're totally broken. And so those things are gone, man. If those things are gone, where is it that people see a problem? Where people are like, oh, the Warriors are gonna, they're gonna be 4 or 5 games better than last season. Like, what are you basing that on?
Well, I think 4 or 5 games will give us around 50, 51 wins, right?
Right.
So I think we could be. I do get have 5 or 6 more wins this year. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be
Draymond missed
surprised.
30 games, man. Can we stop the foolishness, man?
Yeah.
It's true. He did.
So
We were fucking dead last on defense when he didn't play in top 5 when he played, bro.
yeah.
And we had 45 clutch games, and we lost 23 of those games. You
And
trying
we
to tell
didn't
me
have
if
slow
Draymond
mo.
wasn't there, we couldn't win 6 games, 7 games? And that team was garbage last year, brother. We have
Yeah.
no chance of fucking 48 wins, man. Come on, cut it out.
Yeah. So Shadow and Jim, would you agree that the last 2 years, we had a lopsided roster? As in 2023, we had the best 5-man in the league. We had a subpar bench, and then the following year, with Clay regressing and Draymond missing games, we had a bad starting lineup and a good bench. You would agree
He
that
didn't.
you?
I would agree. I would agree. I would think it's. I'm gonna be honest with you. How can I say this without getting these guys in trouble? Let's just say I spoke to some people, and the inability for Steve Kerr to turn the corner is what stopped it. It's like a rapper who's hot, sells 10 million records, and thinks they can continually rap the way they do without turning the corner. And I believe the league didn't catch up to the Golden State Warriors. They just started doing what the Golden State Warriors were doing, and it evened the playing field. As you guys saw, a great example of it, the Los Angeles Lakers last night. You see how much different they look when they're moving the ball, reading, reacting, motion offense,
They're
not
better.
standing in the corner, shooters just not chilling in the corner. You see how much different that team looked last night?
Yeah.
And that's what happened to the rest of the league. Miami started doing it. Dallas started doing it. I remember right after the championship, we were playing Dallas, and I saw Luka Doncic running a split action on us. I was sick to my stomach, and that's when I knew Steve Kerr had to change shit up, and they did.
Yeah, I don't think that last season's roster was necessarily garbage as much as the way the coaching staff organized it was garbage. They had capable combinations that they just simply did not go to. You know, they sat Trace for a chunk of the season in favor of Dario Saric. He's a real defensive piece. So if you use him earlier from the get-go, they wouldn't have had the results that they had last season.
And you know what's the saddest part about that, Jim? They knew Dario Saric. They knew Dario Saric wasn't it, and Trace should be playing in place of him, but they still specifically kept on playing Dario when they knew even before this time last year, like they knew. I think I left like October 9th or something like that to go visit my dad. I told Dre that they're planning to start Trace Jackson Jr. and they're gearing him up so by the mid-season he'll be starting. So they knew that the Dario thing wouldn't work. Dario played 20 games before they even budged and said, you know what, let's sit this down. And by that time, we went 4-12 during that time when Dario was playing the 5 and playing 22 minutes a game. That was killing us.
What was insane was that he was still on the roster after the trade deadline. That's what I was floored by. If they understood that he wasn't it, why would he still be on the roster? That's what I just, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Remember Brad Wanamaker? The guy was a freaking disaster. And he was getting more fourth quarter minutes than Steph Curry. And he was garbage, hot garbage. And what happened? They got rid of him at the trade deadline. You know what I'm saying? If somebody doesn't work out and they're awful and they're a rotational piece and you're trying to do something, like, you got to make a move there. And so, again, not to overly focus on what happened last season, but, you know, you look at, consider what the issue.
The good news is they figured it out, Jim. That's the good news.
Yes.
They figured it out. It had turned around, and now they use that as a stepping stone. How they ended the season, they used it as a stepping stone to continue into this season. And for that, we have a better roster, better staff, and there's actual vibes. The team was dead last year. Like,
you know what I want to say, man?
The chemistry wasn't there last year. The chemistry.
Shadow, you know what I want to say? I want to say that this is the real continuation from the championship season, because the last 2 seasons were it was like a bad dream almost. And I feel like,
bro, I couldn't even believe the pool punch, man. After that's when everything kind of went downhill.
Yeah, and I just feel like
Jim,
the way they're going to play this season is going to be a lot closer to 21-22 than what it's been the last 2 seasons.
What you just said is very profound, Jim. You are perfectly correct, bro. This is the continuation of our championship year. That's what we should have done. Those are
Yeah.
the type of players we should have acquired.
Yep. That's what it should have been. They wasted 2 years. That's why I was devastated. That's why I was yelling. That's why I was screaming. That's why I was providing solutions. It took them 2 years to get to them, but we're here.
The good is this game is game believes in, and after the Celtics get mollywopped by us, I think Bubba will be on board. So I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this roster is much more conducive to two-way play. So that's really important. Um, like I mentioned earlier, like establishing a defensive identity is of the utmost importance if we're looking to make any sort of deep run this season. So that's something that Steve has preached, and positional size is something that we have this year on the roster, and that's something that I've noticed. We've all seen Steve play in the starting lineup, right? With Steph, Wiggins at the 2, JK at the 3, Dre at the 4, and Trace at the 5. No more like small ball lineups starting Draymond at the 5 or 3 guard lineups. We're seeing much more positional balance, players playing their appropriate positions overall, and really making sure that we're leaning, the ability to guard in space, the ability to rotate and scramble and switch. I think that's huge. And so, be physical, be on a string. These are things that we need to preach and we need to stay consistent with. And then another area is getting back in transition. Last season, we were one of the worst transition defenses in the league, right? So getting back in transition, stopping the fast breaks, making sure that we're hustling back and preventing those easy points that we were giving up left and right last season. Because like Jim said earlier, these games are won and lost in the margins, right? And to win in the margins, you have to make sure that you stop some of those fast breaks so that you're able to, potentially slow down, the other team and get them into the half court and make it more difficult for them to score, because that's the easiest way to score is when you're in transition in an open court and you're kicking out to shooters or getting to the rim. And then defending without fouling. That's an area that I think we've struggled with the last few years is, fouling a lot. And I think even in preseason, that's something that we could clean up a bit is finding ways to defend without fouling, not reaching in, staying disciplined, remaining textbook on defense and just sliding your feet. So that's the key. But yeah, defense is going to be, the forefront of our identity this season, and that's what we need. So I'm glad that the roster, we added Kyle Anderson. Trace is going to take a step. JK, we hope, does as well, defensively. Wiggins is going to be back to what we all know he can be from a two-way standpoint. Melton has a 6'8" wingspan. So we have a lot of length and we have a lot of positional size we can take advantage of and really establish ourselves as a top defensive team. And then the last expectation I have from Steve is just experimenting. We know Steve is going to experiment. He does it without fail every season. Rotation adjustments, changing the rotation, every few games or so, tweaking things, trying new things. I do think it'll be more matchup dependent this year. Last season, I think we kind of blindly went in running the same rotation, starting lineup, bench lineups. But this year, I think it'll be more intentional and making sure that whatever we do is more matchup dependent and that like we're going to adjust based on who we're facing rather than trying to force one single lineup to work across all matchups, because I think that's kind of the wave of the NBA now is you're going to face different teams and different styles every night. But at the same time, I do think we have to establish a baseline starting lineup. So while I do think he'll be making tweaks and mostly with the bench, less so with the starting lineup, I do think like he'll have a consistent starting lineup for the first at least 15, 20 games before making a change. But I do expect the rotation to change based on the matchup, whether that means Moody's in or GP's in. Obviously, like I said, you want as consistent a rotation as possible, but at the same time, it's not that realistic when you're facing different matchups and different personnel every night. And then lastly, just lineup combinations. Like I said earlier, Steve likes to run different combos, whether it's 3 guard lineups or we saw in the preseason we ran 2 bigs with Trace and Draymond, just kind of taking different routes and different paths, combining different skill sets and leaning into different strengths and insulating different weaknesses. I think that's something Steve is going to continue to do, but at the same time, we'll see. I think the versatility we have on this team is off the charts compared to last year. So let's hope that he leans into that and doesn't, minimize what some of our strengths are from that standpoint. But any other expectations from Steve Kerr's standpoint? We can get into predictions now. Okay. What do you guys think about the record? Do you guys agree with that? So 52-30 is what I have. Higher, lower? What do you think?
Around there.
Wow.
I think you're
So
being extremely conservative.
Around there. I can see 51-31.
This
I can
is
see
actually
50-32.
it's actually kind of fair, but so you think the worst they'll be is the second round, right, Dre?
Yeah, I think if we are healthy and we have the pieces we want out there, then yeah, I think we can be a second
I
round
like that defensive
team
grade.
at the worst. At the worst, I think.
No,
Do you
this is
think
solid.
that do you feel like this team, based on their construction, everything you've seen, is it as good as or better or worse than the championship team?
I think it should be better. I think we have better players. Like,
Hold on.
from a talent standpoint.
So you think this team is going to be better than the one that won the title?
I think it's better in terms of the roster, but I also think the league got better. Relative to the league, I think we're probably in worse position because Boston just has become so good the last few years. OKC's taken a major step. Minnesota, obviously, this season
Hold
they may
on.
not be as good.
Hold
But
on. You're talking about a team when they were fully healthy, went 18 and well, not fully healthy, but close to it. They were 18-2.
Jim, Dre. Well,
yeah,
can we deal in reality? The reality is, we don't have to be the best team. We don't have to be. We have to be standing at the top of the hill in the West, and I think we can do that.
You're not going to be
OKC
standing at the top of the West with 52 wins.
No, that's not going to happen. Yeah,
what happened?
You're not going to be standing at the top of the West with 52 wins.
No, the top of the West meaning we win the West.
He means beating everybody in the West.
Beating everybody. That's all we got to do.
Oh yeah. Well, you want to maximize the opportunity to be able to do that, and
I'm not saying 52 wins. I don't.
Why do people take home court for granted?
Home court
is like, oh, they don't need home court.
Jim, this is just math, man. It's not hard.
So Jim, I always say, I think that for a team to have good chances, they need to have home court advantage in at least 2 rounds. I want at least 2 rounds of home court advantage. Otherwise, I think we're in bad shape if we're going into the second round having to go with somebody else.
Hey, Jordan, can I say something? Can I say something to you real quick? Jordan,
as a top 2 seed, yeah. Well, at least one round. Here, I'll say this: at least one round.
Listen, Jordan.
Yes.
Warriors has a chance. I believe the Warriors have a chance if they avoid the play-ins. It doesn't matter where we slot. I mean, as long as we go from 1 to 6, 1 to 6 will be all right. It's when we get ourselves in the play-ins. It's when we destroy. In fact, I don't even remember a year that we were in the play-ins that we ended up winning. I don't remember that.
Once again, getting at least one round.
Have to be a top 3 seed entity.
Seeding
absolutely matters. The only team in NBA history to win a championship that wasn't a top 3 seed was the Houston Rockets. And I think it was the Celtics in like the 70s as well. Only 2 teams in history have won a title not being a top 3 seed. If you want to win a title or you think you have a chance, you must be a top 3 seed. Home court matters a lot in the playoffs.
It does.
Every time Golden State Warriors have won a title, they had home court advantage for most of their series. In 2022, they had home court in
what was Minnesota's record or Denver's record?
They were 57 wins.
57-25.
They were top 3.
Yeah, I think 57-25.
Okay, so hey, I have a question for you, Baba. Since you point that out,
yeah,
Baba, can you hear me? My question for you is: has history in the history of the NBA, has any team made it to the finals but not being a top 5 team?
Houston Rockets. They were the 6th seed.
Well, what about Dallas?
Dallas just did it last year.
Dallas was the first spot, but Dallas didn't win.
I'm not talking about winning, bro. I'm not talking about winning.
Okay,
I'm talking about making it to the finals. Making it to the finals.
Right.
Well, it doesn't matter.
So that theory really does not make any sense.
No, you should look at the history of wins and losses, man, in the finals.
Say that again.
You should look at the wins and losses of the finals. Of course, it matters whether the
me,
team
to
loses
me,
when you make it
making
to
the
the
Yeah,
finals.
finals
at the end of the
is all
day,
I'm.
it's about winning. If you make the finals, you shouldn't want to fucking lose. No one cares if you fucking lose.
No one
Nobody
cares
cares.
if you make it to the
If
finals
you
and then
make, no one
lose.
gives a
I
fuck if
understand
Dallas
that. I
made it. Did
understand that.
Dallas
The idea
win?
is
No,
always to win the
nobody
top
cares.
prize. I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm
because
simply
if you're in
telling
the
you.
finals, you
I'm
have to
simply
win. Then
telling
why
you the
else are you
Warriors
there?
will have a
I'm
chance
gonna
if
be
they
honest,
are
guys.
top
Guys, let's
six.
just be real, man. Let's just. This is a new NBA. We could talk, look at the history till we're blue in the face. There is no difference between the fifth and the second seed last year, bro. There was none.
That's
There was
exactly what
none.
I'm
There was
trying to. That's exactly
no
what I'm trying to say,
definitive.
Shadow.
There was no
Exactly what I'm trying to say.
definitive advantage between Minnesota, Dallas, and Denver. Those three teams were the exact same team. You could coin flip who was gonna win in each series. Nothing was definitive. Boston Celtics are showing me right now that they're definitive in the West. I mean, in the East, and probably right now as it stands, the best team in the league. We are in October. Do you know how good we can get in 8 months, bro? Do you guys literally know how good we can get in 8 months?
That's exactly what I'm trying to say, bro.
Like,
Exactly what I'm
I'm
trying to say.
being dead serious. We could be 3 times better than we are tonight. We have to just
Exactly,
slow
because the
down,
floor,
bro. Like
Shadow, the
right
floor of
now,
this team is so high. That's right.
the,
That's
the
right.
floor is fucking gigantic, bro. And all this, like, I get it, but we gonna see how the season is. But I'm telling you guys, a lot of people ain't taking in consideration the type of heart this team has, man. Steph and Draymond, like, let's go two men in the league. Steph and Draymond. There's Chet, Chet and Shea. There's Brunson and Cat. There's um there's Giannis and Dame, right? Out of those teams right there, or Kyrie, Kyrie and Luca. Out of that pool that I just mentioned, who the fuck do you trust in the finals?
Bro, what are we doing?
I'm asking you, who do you trust in the finals
Who?
when it comes to
Who?
the finals?
Who?
Because the finals is not about the team. It comes down to two guys
Out of
every
who?
single year.
Out of who? What the
Out
matchup?
of the,
He's talking
out
about
of
Steph and
everybody who I
Draymond. Who you
mentioned,
trust over them? No one,
who
really.
No one.
who do you trust over Draymond and Steph
No one.
as far as
It's
in the
yeah.
finals to get it done?
Andrew Wiggins when he's healthy.
Wiggins.
No, I'm talking about we're only picking two guys. I'm I'm voting Steph and Draymond
Sure.
against any two man in the league. When it
Oh.
comes to go to the finals,
Oh.
do you trust Joker and Jamal over Steph and Draymond? Do you trust Dame and Giannis over Steph and Draymond in the finals with finals experience?
Yes,
Who do you trust?
I would trust Dame and
Okay,
Giannis
well then we have a fucking
against
shot.
like Steph and Draymond.
To get there is a journey, and it's 8 months away. But as
Hey,
far as
Shadow. It's
yeah,
like I said. As long as we avoid the play-in, we'll be all right. The playing games I'll call them. I'll call them our shit. What's the word?
Kryptonite.
Um, n- kryptonite. Hey, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Playing
The
games are
playing
our
games
kryptonite.
are designed to beat a team like the Warriors. We cannot
yep.
win in the play-in. Because the problem with the play-in is they legit take Steph away and they make everyone else beat them. Like that's legit what they've done every time. They just throw everything at Steph because it's one game, right? So yeah, I do agree. Avoid the play. If you're in the play-in, you're fucked. Like of course. Of course.
Okay, so to bring this back to base, um, uh, Dre, I was trying to ask you, right? So we're talking about, yes, other teams got better as well, but if the Warriors also got better than the championship team that won the title that year, and think about that team and the fact that they missed Draymond for half the season and they still got 53 wins. And you're thinking, and this is assuming that Draymond is not going to miss a significant chunk of the season this time, right? And you
right.
still have them at 52. So for me, if you're saying that this team is better than that team that went 18-2 when they were healthy, and then saying that they're going to get to 52 wins, I think is beyond conservative, actually.
I think the reason I'm saying this is I'm also accounting for things that could go wrong. Like there is a world where, maybe certain lineups don't work, or maybe it takes us some time to figure out the right tweaks. And maybe it cost us some games along the way. Maybe some guys struggle. Like last season, we had some unexpected players struggling. There's also a world where, we blow leads. Like we got to still see certain things pan out, and we got to figure out. Like now, in my opinion, I don't see that happening, which is why I have us at 50 plus. But it's an NBA season full of a lot of variance with a lot of other talent on other teams, and things happen, right? So this is not to me the ceiling of this team. This to me is like the middle ground. I'm
Okay.
not, because there's people that think 48, 49, and then there's people that think 54, 55. And then there's people that even think higher or lower than those. But
Damn.
I think that's the general consensus is like 47 to 53 is like the range.
So you
I'm
don't
leaning
think we'll
more
be a top
towards
5 defense?
I think we can be. I'm saying that's more so towards the middle ground because there's some people that think we'll be closer to 5 or even 4. There's some people that think that will be like 9 or 10. So I think this is like the most balanced projection I can make based on like what is realistic, but also if there's upside with this team. But I do think the what you guys should be looking at is not even the numbers in terms of the record because I have 52 and 30. 52 and 30 is probably a top 4 seed. So I have us as around a top 4 seed. I have us at top 10 defense at least, maybe top 5, and I have this
Dre,
team. Yeah.
obviously the record is an easy conversation to have. 52 wins,
Mm-hmm.
57 wins, 50. But a record is not indicative of if you're going to be a championship team. What's
Ooh.
indicative is the net rating.
Right.
So where do you think net rating wise the Golden State Warriors can be?
I have us around top 5, top 6, top 5, top 6. So that's a contender range.
To be fair, 52 wins would have given us the what was it, the 4th, 5th seed? Yeah, last year.
Yeah, 52 wins is like a top 4 seed. So I have us at around a top 4 seed. I have it being a fringe top 5 defense, maybe top 5, a fringe top 10 offense, maybe top 10. And then I have us as a top 5 net rating team, give or take, around a +4, +5 team.
Well, it's
Plus
fine. It's fine.
4 or plus 5.
You know what? It's totally fine. Like, this is your prediction. NTD has his own prediction. We all have our own predictions, and
But I
well,
will
it
say
doesn't
this:
matter because the
I
season's about to
can't.
start.
I wouldn't rule out. I wouldn't rule out the 52 being a 49 if things go wrong, and I wouldn't rule out the 52 being a 55 if things go right. So I think this thing can kind of swing either way. The 52 for me was more like a balance between what like the best case scenario is and like the worst case scenario, if that makes sense.
I just saw the West standings. How the fuck were the Clippers the 4th seed last year? We can definitely be better than them.
No, I know, and the Clippers are going to take a hit this year, of course. So I have us as around a top 4 to 6 seed. That's what I have. Now, does that mean we can't be top 3? No, I actually think we can be.
Well,
I
here's
think we
another
can
thing
be.
you guys are not taking into consideration. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the league was great last season, right? That doesn't mean the teams that were great last season would be the same as good this season, right? I mean, there are a lot of teams that were on top that will go in the bottom, as in Denver. I don't believe Denver is going to be top 3. I think Denver is moving up to probably top 4, 5, 6.
I think Minnesota's taking a hit too.
I want to get your guys' thoughts though on because what's more
Dre,
important to
Dre,
me.
do you know why you're 4 to 6 seed? Go ahead and
Yeah, what I was about to say is yes, I said 46 to 48 wins. That's why I'm giving myself room to change my mind later. You know what I mean? Mainly because I know because there's a good chance that the Warriors might turn out to be the best team in the league or in the West by mid-season. You know what I'm saying? So
Sounded real shaky, NTD.
I'm
Better
not
stand
shaky
on
at
your
all, brother.
prediction,
Look,
man.
as
Stand on
I've
your
always
prediction.
said,
I got 50 wins for us, and I'm standing on that all season.
50,
50
50
wins.
wins.
51.
But
50
I want to
wins.
just make a point here. I don't think we should focus. So my prediction is 52 and 30, but that's kind of like in the balance. What I want to look at, okay, because record is record. Look at the right hand column. The right hand column is the more important one. The floor versus the ceiling. What do you think the floor of this team? My floor is if we're healthy and things are connecting and we're a good team, I have us as a second round exit minimum, and I think we can win the title. I think there's a path to a championship from a ceiling standpoint. So that's where I have us.
Our floor, I feel like our floor is everything. Like it's just around average. Like if everybody does about average to what it is. Like, for example, average for Kuminga wouldn't be him hitting 20 points. It would probably be like a 17, 18 point outing a night. For Wiggins, it's like 15, 16. Draymond doesn't get suspended the whole season, but maybe misses a few games. We're probably a tough out first or second round. I can agree with that.
What do you think, Jim and Shadow? What do you think the ceiling of this team is? A championship?
You already know.
That's where you stand.
You already know.
65 and 17.
And then where do you have the floor? What do you think, like, the bare minimum? If we're healthy, if we're connected, like, nothing out of the ordinary takes place to where, something drastic happens.
The floor, I'll just say 55.
Okay. And, so that would be like a second round exit or so, probably?
Oh, no. You're saying it, like,
In
what's
terms of,
gonna...
like, the finish, where we finish.
Oh. I mean, anything other than a championship is a failure. So I'm not even looking at anything else.
Okay. I feel you. That's fair. I mean, Steph said it himself. You guys heard the interview where he's like, I'm playing for a championship at this point, and there's nothing else that matters. So obviously that's where his mind is at, and obviously he knows, like, we're not the favorites, but that doesn't mean we can't go out there, compete, and put together a really good team that is in the mix. And that's just the key. So, but yeah, that was my team projection for this season. I know there's some people that may be higher, they might be lower. That's my kind of balanced, based on you, because I do think there's things that can go really well, and I think there's things that can go awry. Like, to me, it's impossible to predict, because last season I had our team winning 50 plus games too, but the reason we won 46, but Jordan, you would admit that we probably should have. The reason we didn't was things that were
Because of
just
Steve Kerr.
not even Steve, Draymond getting suspended for 20, 30 games. You had, the young guys didn't get the playing time they deserved.
A lot of guys,
Wiggins and Loon struggled.
struggling. Yeah.
How many
Paul
how,
closing
how
lineups,
many
tiny lineups, Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson lineups. Like, come on.
I never liked that Chris Paul. I never
only-
liked that. No hate to Chris Paul, but I just never liked that signing for us. That trade. Sorry, I never liked that
I think
trade.
Warriors fans,
I love
the
that
fan
trade.
base,
I love
their
that trade.
minds have been like eroded. Like, it's been diseased to believe that, like, shit's all over. You know what I mean?
I
I
remember
think the last 2
year.
years have been so traumatic that, like,
Yeah.
a lot of people have just lost faith. But like I said, I just think that they took a 2-year hiatus. They lost Mike Brown, they lost some key pieces, and they just never got on the right page, and then they were on Joe Lacob's timeline, and that also fucked some shit up. So for me, this has been an expectation every year since Steph Curry, since they started this run, is that they're capable of winning 60 games on any given season. So that's the standard that I hold when talking about Steph Curry and, a roster construction that makes sense around him. The only thing that, if you want to talk about anything that could go awry or something unexpected, or, you know what I mean, the only thing that is really critical that I think that you may have to look at is Steph Curry. Where is he at? Like, what does he look like at age 36 going to age 37? What is the drop off level? That kind of thing. That's like the one thing that maybe you would put into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think he'll be, in good shape. I think this roster can do a good job of taking that burden and that, responsibility off his shoulders a bit on both ends of the court. So, I mean, hey, shout out to everyone in here, though. Everyone on stage in the chat giving your opinions and predictions. So this was the team preview for the Warriors this season.